The Caltherian Military Institute floated in geosynchronous orbit above Calthera Prime, a monument to 3,000 years of martial excellence and approximately 0 sense of irony. Its crystalline spires reached toward the void like the fingers of a particularly ambitious deity, each tower humming with enough destructive potential to vaporize a small moon. Or a large moon, if you weren't particular about doing it quickly. Inside this bastion of military perfection, Supreme Commandant Vex Thor stood before a holographic display, his 4 eyes narrowing in what could only be described as profound regret. The display showed personnel files, diplomatic agreements, and one particularly problematic document with the seal of the Galactic Cooperation Initiative stamped across it in cheerful, optimistic colors. "Remind me again," Vex Thor rumbled, his mandibles clicking in agitation. "Why we agreed to this human exchange program." His adjutant, a slender Formian named Kess, consulted her datapad with the resigned air of someone who had answered this question 17 times already. "Diplomatic relations, sir. Cultural exchange. The advancement of interspecies cooperation and mutual understanding." "Mutual understanding," Vex Thor repeated, tasting the words like they were spoiled protein paste. "The humans have been in space for what? 200 of their years? We've been perfecting combat doctrine since before their ancestors discovered fire. What exactly are we supposed to learn from them?" Kess wisely said nothing. The transport shuttle was already docking. The human arrived precisely on schedule, which was the first surprise. Most species new to galactic civilization struggled with the concept of relativistic time dilation and showed up either 3 days early or 2 weeks late, usually with elaborate excuses involving quantum uncertainty. This one walked off the transport ramp with a duffel bag, standard-issue boots, and the kind of confident stride that suggested she either knew exactly what she was doing or had absolutely no idea and refused to let that stop her. Her name was Kira Valdez, according to the file. 23 standard years old. Former collegiate athlete in some bizarre human sport called lacrosse that apparently involved running around with sticks and a ball while attempting to bludgeon each other within socially acceptable parameters. Her academic record was unremarkable. Her physical assessments were average by human standards, which meant laughably inadequate by galactic military standards. She looked around the hangar bay with open curiosity, taking in the assembled cadets with their various appendages, sensory organs, and chitinous coverings. Then she smiled, hoisted her bag, and walked directly to Vex Thor. "Reporting for training, sir," she said, delivering a crisp salute that was technically correct and somehow still managed to look vaguely insulting. Vex Thor regarded her the way one might regard a particularly optimistic insect. "Cadet Valdez, welcome to the Caltherian Military Institute. I trust your journey was uneventful?" "Mostly just boring, sir. The in-flight entertainment was a documentary about proper tentacle grooming. Very informative, but not really applicable to my situation." Kess made a sound that might have been a suppressed laugh. Vex Thor's mandibles twitched. "You will find our training regimen considerably more challenging than your human institutions. The washout rate for new species is approximately 73%. We do not lower our standards for anyone." "Wouldn't want you to, sir. You will be integrated with Class Theta 9. Instructor Zargon will handle your combat training. Dismissed." Kira saluted again and followed Kess toward the cadet quarters, leaving Vex Thor to contemplate whether diplomatic relations were truly worth this headache. Instructor Zargon was a Vraxian, which meant he stood roughly 8 feet tall, possessed 6 arms, and harbored the kind of casual superiority that came from belonging to a species that had conquered 47 star systems before developing interstellar radio. His exoskeleton gleamed like polished obsidian, and his voice carried the grinding quality of tectonic plates having a disagreement. He surveyed Class Theta 9 with the critical eye of someone who had trained champions and buried failures. Literally buried them, in a few cases, though those incidents were sealed in classified files. "Today," Zargon announced, "you receive your training weapons. These are not toys. These are precision instruments of warfare, scaled down for training purposes, but fully capable of incapacitating or, if you are sufficiently incompetent, killing." The cadets stood at attention, a rainbow coalition of galactic military hopefuls. There was Krieg, a Mantarian whose crystalline body refracted light in dizzying patterns. Yix and Yax, twin Dulothians who communicated through pheromones and shared a single brain between them. Talara, a Cystian whose four-dimensional perception gave her an unsettling habit of responding to questions before they were asked. And Kira, standing among them like a particularly determined dandelion in a garden of carnivorous plants. "Krieg, step forward." The Mantarian approached, and Zargon presented him with a plasma rifle, its housing carved from compressed neutronium and inlaid with targeting matrices that interface directly with the user's neural patterns. Mark 7 Plasma Accelerator. Effective range, 3,000 meters. Rate of fire, 1,200 rounds per minute. Capable of penetrating Class 5 armor plating. Krieg accepted the weapon with appropriate reverence. "Yix, Yax, step forward." The twins received matched neural disruptors, elegant weapons that could scramble an opponent's synaptic pathways from 50 meters away. Non-lethal mostly, unless you counted permanent vegetative states as a form of death. Talara was awarded an energy shield projector that could predict incoming attacks by reading quantum probability fluctuations. Show-off technology, really. But the Cystians had never been known for subtlety. One by one, the cadets received instruments of elegant destruction, each weapon a masterwork of engineering representing thousands of years of martial development. The pile of unclaimed weapons dwindled until only one item remained. "Cadet Valdez, step forward." Kira approached, her expression neutral. Every eye in the training hall was on her, and several species who possessed something other than eyes were also paying attention through whatever sensory apparatus they preferred. Zargun reached beneath the presentation podium and withdrew a wooden staff. It was approximately 6 feet long, made from some unremarkable brown wood, and possessed all the technological sophistication of a particularly straight stick. No power cells, no targeting systems, no quantum entanglement matrices or probability engines. It was a stick that someone had sanded smooth and sealed with what appeared to be ordinary lacquer. The silence in the training hall carried the weight of collective disbelief. "This," Zargon announced, his voice dripping with condescension thick enough to bottle, "is a kinetic impact device. Primitive, yet, but appropriate for your current skill level. We believe in building fundamentals before advancing to more sophisticated weaponry. You will master this before being permitted to handle actual military equipment." Kira took the staff, testing its weight and balance. She spun it once, experimentally, the wood whistling through the air. How long did it take the other cadets to master fundamentals? The other cadets arrived with fundamental combat training from their respective military traditions. You are starting from a considerably lower baseline. Right. So this is basically the galactic equivalent of giving the new kid the broken controller. I am unfamiliar with that reference. I'll take that as a yes. Kira tucked the staff under her arm. "When do we start?" Zargon's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "Tomorrow. Oro 600 hours. Combat Simulation Delta. I suggest you spend this evening familiarizing yourself with equipment you can actually use without injuring yourself. The other cadets had already started whispering, their various forms of communication creating a symphony of mockery in frequencies ranging from subsonic to gamma radiation. Krieg's crystalline laughter chimed like breaking glass. The twins emitted pheromones that translated roughly to doomed and pathetic. Kira simply nodded, collected her stick, and walked out. Kess found Vexthor in his office 3 hours later, reviewing tactical simulations and contemplating the heat death of the universe as a preferable alternative to diplomatic obligations. Sir, I thought you should know. The human spent the last 2 hours in Training Hall 7. Familiarizing herself with the staff? Vexthor asked without looking up. Destroying practice drones. That got his attention. Excuse me? She programmed a dozen Level 2 combat drones and has been fighting them continuously. Current success rate is approximately 40%. With a wooden stick? Yes, sir. Level 2 drones are designed to challenge cadets with actual weapons. Yes, sir. Vexthor pulled up the security footage. The human moved through the training hall like water finding cracks in stone, the staff blurring in her hands. She wasn't winning through superior technology or overwhelming force. She was winning through sheer, stubborn pattern recognition, adapting to each drone's attack algorithms and exploiting their predictability. It was crude, inelegant, distressingly effective. Continue monitoring, Vexthor ordered. I want daily reports. Sir, if I may ask, why the wooden staff? Surely we could have provided her with at least a basic energy weapon. Vexthor's mandibles twisted into something approximating a smile. Because, Adjutant Kess, Instructor Zargon enjoys testing new species to destruction. He wants to see how long it takes before she complains, requests different equipment, or washes out entirely. It's his idea of motivation. And if she doesn't, then we have a much more interesting problem than a human with a stick. The first combat simulation began precisely at 0600 hours, which meant the cadets had already been standing in formation for 15 minutes because Zargon believed punctuality meant arriving before punctual became relevant. The simulation chamber was a marvel of holographic engineering, capable of recreating any battlefield environment from the methane swamps of Gorath to the crystalline spires of Luminaria. Today's scenario was straightforward. Urban combat in a generic city environment. Lots of cover, multiple elevation levels, plenty of opportunities for tactical maneuvering. The objective, Zargon announced, is simple. Capture and hold the central plaza. Last team standing wins. You will be divided into 2 squads. Lethal force is disabled, but pain simulators are active. If you are hit, you will feel it. He divided the cadets with the casual ruthlessness of someone who had done this thousands of times. Krieg, Yix, and Yax, and Talara on one team. Kira and 3 other cadets on the other team, because apparently Zargon believed in handicapping through forced cooperation with the human. The other 3 cadets on Kira's team were Rax, a Thurian with scales like battle armor and a plasma carbine. Ven, a Delonian whose tentacles could manipulate 3 weapons simultaneously and possessed a neural disruptor. And Cora, a Sistian with probability shields and precognitive combat awareness. They looked at Kira. They looked at her stick. They looked at each other with expressions that transcended species and language, achieving a universal sentiment that roughly translated to, "We are so screwed." "Positions!" Zargon commanded. The simulation activated. The training hall dissolved into a cityscape of gray buildings and narrow streets, holographic but solid enough for combat purposes. Kira's team materialized at the southern entrance. while Krieg's team appeared to the north. "All right," Rax growled, his translator rendering his native language into clipped Standard Galactic. "Standard formation. Cora on point with probability shields. Ven and I provide ranged support. The human stays back and tries not to die embarrassingly fast." "I appreciate the vote of confidence," Kira said, spinning the staff once. "But I've got a better idea. You three draw their attention. Make noise. Look threatening. I'll flank." "Flank with what?" Ven's tentacles writhed in agitation. "You have a stick." "Exactly. They won't waste ammunition on the stick." Before anyone could argue, Kira was moving, using the buildings for cover as she worked her way east. Behind her, she could hear Rax cursing in 3 languages, which she took as a sign he was following the plan. The first exchange of fire lit up the plaza like a small star going supernova. Plasma bolts scorched the air, neural disruptors pulsed with seizure-inducing frequencies, and Cora's probability shields shimmered as they deflected incoming attacks along timeline branches where they missed. No one was watching the alley. Kira emerged behind Talara, who was so focused on her 4-dimensional combat calculations that she failed to account for the 3-dimensional human with the stick. The staff caught her across the back of her primary knees. All Cystians had primary and secondary knees, a redundancy that evolution had gifted them and orthopedic surgeons cursed. Talara went down with a surprised shriek. Her probability shield flickered out. "She's down!" Krieg's crystalline voice shattered into higher frequencies. "How is she down? The human has a stick." Yix and Yax turned as one, their shared consciousness trying to process the improbability. Neural disruptors swiveled toward Kira. She was already moving, the staff sweeping low to hook Yax's ankle while simultaneously jabbing upward into Yix's sensory cluster. The twins' shared brain experienced simultaneous confusion, and they tumbled into each other like a pair of confused puppets. That left Krieg, who finally brought his plasma rifle to bear. The weapon whined as it charged, targeting matrices locking onto Kira's thermal signature. She threw the staff, not at Krieg, at his rifle. The wooden staff struck the plasma accelerator's charging chamber at precisely the wrong moment, disrupting the magnetic containment field. The weapon didn't explode. Safety protocols prevented that. But it did discharge its entire power cell in a brilliant flash that left Krieg's photoreceptors temporarily overloaded. Kira caught the staff as it bounced back, rolled forward, and swept Krieg's legs out from under him. The Mantarian hit the ground with a sound like a wind chime falling downstairs. Silence descended over the simulation. "Simulation complete," the computer announced. "Victory, Blue Team. Time elapsed. 4 minutes, 17 seconds. Zargon stood motionless, all 6 arms frozen in positions that suggested his brain was experiencing a processing error. Around the observation deck, other instructors had stopped their own evaluations to stare at the holographic playback. That, one of them finally said, should not have been possible. The human defeated 4 cadets armed with advanced weaponry, another observed, using a wooden stick. "Yes, thank you. I was present for the same combat simulation you witnessed." Zargon's voice could have etched glass. "Deactivate the simulation." The cityscape dissolved. The cadets stood in the training hall again, some looking dazed, others looking at Kira with expressions ranging from shock to something approaching respect. Krieg recovered first. "Lucky shot." 4 lucky shots, Kira corrected, leaning on her staff. "Maybe 5, depending on whether you count the twins as 1 or 2. "Anomaly," Talara insisted, her 4-dimensional awareness apparently unable to account for embarrassment. "Statistical improbability. Won't happen again." You're right, Kira agreed. Next time you'll be expecting it, which means I'll have to try something different. Zargon descended from the observation deck like an oncoming storm system. Cadet Valdez, interesting performance. Care to explain your tactics? Sure. You gave me a weapon no one respects, so no one considered me a threat. I use that. Also, everyone here relies on their technology so much that they forgot to watch their backs. In lacrosse, we call that ball watching. You get so focused on the ball that you miss the player about to check you into next week. This is not your primitive human sport. No, sir. But people are people mostly, even when they're not technically people. Everyone has patterns. Everyone has blind spots. Technology just gives you more complicated ways to make the same basic mistakes. One of the observing instructors, a grizzled Korthian named Mex Tar, actually laughed. The human has a point, Zargon. When was the last time any of us practiced fighting without our equipment? Zargon's mandibles clicked rapid-fire irritation. Irrelevant. Modern warfare is technological. Primitive combat techniques are historical curiosities. Then why do our combat doctrine manuals still include chapters on equipment failure scenarios? Mextar countered. This discussion is over. Class Theta 9, you are dismissed. Tomorrow, Soro 600 hours, be prepared for advanced scenarios. As the cadets filed out, Krieg fell into step beside Kira. His crystalline body still showed stress fractures from hitting the ground. That was humiliating. Yeah, probably. Want me to teach you the leg sweep? Might be useful if someone gets past your rifle. Krieg's photoreceptors pulsed in colors that didn't translate. You're serious? Completely. Look, I'm going to be here for 6 months. Either I spend that time getting mocked for my stick, or we all get better at not dying when the fancy technology fails. Your choice. The technology doesn't fail? It did today. Krieg considered this. Tomorrow, after training. Training Hall 7. Bring the twins if they're interested. They could use some work on their balance. Word spread through the Institute with the speed that gossip achieves in any military organization, which is to say faster than light and with more destructive potential than most weapons. By evening, every cadet knew about the human with the stick. By morning, betting pools had formed. The next simulation was an ambush scenario. Kira's team was designated as defenders, holding a supply depot against superior numbers. Krieg's team had been reinforced with 3 additional cadets, all armed with state-of-the-art weaponry. The simulation lasted 7 minutes. Kira spent most of it in the rafters of the holographic warehouse, dropping down on attackers who never thought to look up. Her stick disabled 2 rifles, broke 1 tentacle, and left a Thurian with a concussion that the medical staff described as impressively accurate. The third simulation paired Kira directly against Krieg in single combat. The Mentarian had learned from his previous defeat and maintained distance, using his plasma rifle's superior range to keep her pinned down. Kira adapted. She used cover, closed the distance incrementally, and when Krieg finally thought he had her cornered, she used the staff as a vaulting pole to launch herself over his firing line and bring the stick down on his rifle's power coupling. The fourth simulation introduced environmental hazards, electromagnetic storms, radiation zones, gravity fluctuations. Kira's stick worked in all of them. Everyone else's technology experienced malfunctions. By the end of the second week, the betting pools had shifted. The smart money was now on the human. By the end of the third week, cadets were requesting transfers into Class Theta 9. By the end of the fourth week, Instructor Zargon had stopped assigning Kira to teams and started making her the primary opponent in every scenario. She won 47% of the time. The Academy's annual combat tournament was a tradition stretching back centuries, a showcase where cadets demonstrated their skills before assembled military observers, visiting dignitaries, and talent scouts from various planetary defense forces. It was pageantry, politics, and practical demonstration all rolled into one exhausting week of competition. Qualifying rounds were brutal. Only the top 16 cadets from each class advanced. Krieg qualified first in Class Theta 9, his plasma rifle work having improved dramatically after incorporating close combat techniques. Talara placed third, her probability calculations now accounting for improbable variables like humans with sticks. Kira qualified seventh. The announcement sparked immediate controversy. Half the institute claimed she'd earned it through skill. The other half insisted she'd simply been fortunate to face opponents who underestimated her. The betting pools achieved record volume, with odds running 30-1 against her winning more than a single match. The tournament brackets were announced with appropriate ceremony. Kira's first opponent was a Calacian named Vorth, armed with a particle beam projector and an exoskeleton that tripled his strength. His record was flawless. His technique was textbook perfect. The match lasted 90 seconds. Vorth opened with a sustained particle beam barrage that should have ended the fight immediately. Kira used the arena's cover system, moving between obstacles while Vorth's beam carved smoking craters in reinforced walls. When his weapon's heat sink required a 3-second cooldown cycle, she closed the distance. The staff caught Vorth's exoskeleton's knee joint, a design weakness that prioritized strength over flexibility. The joint buckled. Vorth stumbled. The staff's other end caught him across his helmet sensor cluster, and he went down blind, disoriented, and defeated. The crowd erupted in noise across every frequency spectrum. Her second match was against one of the twin Dulothians, Yix, who had spent the last month training specifically to counter her tactics. He maintained maximum distance, used predictive targeting algorithms, and fought with methodical precision. Kira still won, but it took 4 minutes and left her with simulated burns across her shoulder that would have required medical attention in actual combat. The third match was against Talara, who could literally see the future and adjust her tactics accordingly. That fight went to the judge's decision after 12 minutes of combat that resembled a physics experiment more than a battle. With Talara's probability shields flickering through quantum states, while Kira's purely kinetic attacks followed deterministic paths that somehow still connected. Kira advanced. Talara filed a formal complaint arguing that wooden sticks shouldn't be able to hit probability shields that existed in superposition. The judges denied it on grounds that if the shield existed in any possible timeline, the stick could hit it in that timeline, therefore the stick had hit it. Quantum mechanics gave Talara a headache. The stick had given her a concussion. The semifinals arrived with Kira facing Krieg, because fate apparently had a sense of irony. The Mantarian had become genuinely skilled, incorporating close combat techniques with his ranged capabilities. They knew each other's fighting styles intimately now. The match was a masterpiece of tactical adaptation. Krieg forced Kira into bad positions with suppressing fire. Kira exploited microsecond gaps in his coverage to advance. Back and forth, move and counter-move, a chess match played at combat speed. It came down to a single exchange. Krieg's rifle, fully charged, aimed at center mass. Kira within striking range, staff raised. Both committed to their attacks simultaneously. The staff struck the rifle's barrel at the precise instant of discharge. The plasma bolt deflected upward at a 15-degree angle, missing Kira by centimeters. The staff's backswing caught Krieg's rifle grip, and the weapon went flying. They stood facing each other, both breathing hard, Krieg disarmed, and Kira with her stick raised for a finishing blow. Yield, Krieg said quietly. The arena shook with applause, cheers, and several subsonic frequencies that translated roughly to appreciation for a well-fought match. In the holding area, Krieg's crystalline structure showed stress fractures from combat impacts. You're going to win this whole thing. Maybe. Who's left? Daxron from Class Alpha 3, Vraxian, Instructor Zargon's star pupil. He's won the tournament 3 years running. What's he armed with? Everything. Plasma rifle, neural disruptor backup, energy shields, predictive targeting AI, combat exoskeleton. He's basically a one-person army. Sounds challenging. Challenging. Krieg's laughter chimed like breaking crystal. He's never lost a match, never been seriously threatened, and unlike the rest of us, he won't underestimate you. He's been studying your fights. Good. I'd hate for this to be boring. The championship match was scheduled for the tournament's final day, with maximum attendance guaranteed. Supreme Commandant Vexith Thor sat in the commander's box, surrounded by military observers from 15 different species. Beside him, Adjutant Kess maintained careful notes on everything that might prove diplomatically significant. In the arena below, Daxron stood at one end, 8 feet of Vraxian combat excellence covered in military-grade equipment that represented the pinnacle of 3,000 years of weapons development. His 6 arms carried enough firepower to level a building. At the other end, Kira held a wooden stick. The betting odds had shifted to 12-1 against her. Most of that betting was coming from human observers who had shown up specifically to watch their species' representative compete. Hope, apparently, was a human specialty even when mathematics argued against it. The referee, a neutral Korthian official, activated the combat arena's full sensor suite. Combatants ready? Daxron's vocalization modules produced a grinding affirmative. Kira simply nodded. Begin. Daxron opened with overwhelming force, all 6 arms firing simultaneously. Plasma bolts, neural disruptors, and kinetic rounds filled the air in a pattern designed to eliminate any possible evasion route. It was the kind of opening salvo that had won him 3 consecutive championships. Kira went vertical, using the staff to vault upward toward the arena's ceiling framework. The barrage passed beneath her, and she caught one of the structural beams, swinging her momentum to carry her laterally. Daxron's targeting AI tracked AI. Her movement adjusted firing solutions and unleashed a second barrage. But Kira was already moving again, using the ceiling support structure like a 3-dimensional highway, staying in motion, never presenting a stationary target. Impressive acrobatics, Daxron's translator rendered his growl. But you cannot stay up there forever. Don't need forever. Just need you to run out of ammunition. My power cells will last for 17 more minutes of continuous fire. Then I'd better hurry. Kira dropped, the staff extended downward. Daxron tracked her descent, multiple weapons converging on her projected landing point. At the last second, she twisted, using the staff to hook a ceiling beam and redirect her fall. She landed behind Daxron instead of in front of him. The staff swept low, targeting the exoskeleton's ankle joints. Daxron pivoted with machine-assisted speed, but Kira had already moved, her second strike aimed at his weapon grips. For 3 minutes, they traded attacks at a pace that left the audience struggling to follow. Daxron's superior firepower met Kira's superior mobility. His technological advantage met her tactical flexibility. And slowly, incrementally, the wooden stick began finding targets. A strike to a rifle's targeting sensor, a tap against a power coupling, a thrust that forced Daxron to choose between maintaining position and protecting his equipment. "You're fighting my weapons," Daxron observed, his respect audible even through the translator. "Not me. You're just the guy holding them. Tactical error. I am Vraxian. We are warriors before we are weapons operators." Two of his arms holstered their firearms. The exoskeleton's strength enhancers engaged fully. He rushed forward with speed that should have been impossible for something his size. Kira met the charge, staff braced. The impact sent her sliding backward 3 meters, boots scoring lines in the arena floor. But she stayed on her feet. They fought at close range now, and Daxron's 4 remaining arms gave him an overwhelming advantage. He could attack from multiple angles simultaneously, while Kira's staff could only block one direction at a time. She compensated by not being where his attacks expected her to be. Duck under this strike, sidestep that grab, use his own momentum against him. It was lacrosse body checking, elevated to Mortal Kombat. Every impact calculated, every movement precise. The staff caught Daxron's remaining rifle and sent it spinning away. One weapon down. His neural disruptor came up, point-blank range, no possible evasion. Kira jammed the staff into the weapon's emitter array the instant before it fired. The neural disruptor's pulse reflected back into its own housing, and the weapon shut down with a sad, electronic whimper. 2 weapons down. Daxron still had his energy shields and 4 arms worth of enhanced strength. He grabbed for the staff, intending to simply rip it from her hands. Kira let him take it. For exactly half a second. Then she twisted, using his pulling force against him, redirecting his strength into a rotation that brought him off balance. The staff slipped from his grip at precisely the moment she wanted, and she caught it mid-spin, bringing it around in an arc that caught Daxron across his sensory cluster. His shields flared, absorbing most of the impact. But most wasn't all, and the fraction that got through was enough to make his vision blur. He swung blindly. She ducked under the strike, swept his legs, and as he fell, placed the staff's end against his throat with exactly enough pressure to signal victory, without causing actual harm. "Yield?" she said quietly. For a long moment, Daxron lay there, every combat algorithm in his augmented brain trying to find the sequence of decisions that had led to this outcome. Finally, his translator produced a single word: yield. The arena exploded into chaos. Supreme Commandant Vexthor sat in silence, watching the human cadet accept her trophy, an ornate crystal sphere representing martial excellence, while the assembled crowd produced enough noise to register on seismic sensors. "Sir?" Kess ventured. "Your thoughts?" "I am thinking," Vexthor said slowly, "about our standard combat doctrine, about how we train every cadet to rely on their equipment as their primary advantage, about what happens when that equipment fails, or is unavailable, or is compromised. The human proved quite definitively that technology alone does not guarantee victory. Indeed, she also proved that 3,000 years of military tradition might have overlooked something fundamental. He paused. What was that human sport she played? "Lacrosse, sir. Apparently it involves significant running, hitting people with sticks, and something called cradling that I have not fully researched. Add it to the supplementary training curriculum, along with primitive weapons familiarization. Sir, are you suggesting we train future cadets to fight with wooden sticks?" "I am suggesting," Vexthor corrected, "that we train them to fight with everything, including wooden sticks. Technology is an advantage, only if you remember how to function without it. The human understood this instinctively. We had to be embarrassed into learning it." Down in the arena, Kira was surrounded by cadets asking about her techniques, her training methods, her willingness to teach them how to fight the way she fought. Krieg stood beside her, his crystalline structure still showing stress fractures, but his posture suggesting pride. Instructor Zargon approached through the crowd, his 6 arms crossed in a posture that might have indicated resignation or respect. Possibly both. Cadet Valdez, congratulations on your victory. Thank you, sir. I learned from an excellent instructor. Sarcasm. Honesty. You gave me impossible challenges with inadequate equipment. That taught me more than winning with superior firepower ever could have. Zargon's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. The wooden staff was meant to be a handicap. I know, sir. But here's the thing about handicaps. They only matter if you let them define what you can do. You gave me a stick and expected me to fail. I took the stick and learned to win with it. Your expectations were the real handicap, not my equipment. Philosophical insights from a lacrosse player. From a human, sir. We're pretty good at making do with what we've got. 3,000 years of military tradition is impressive, but we've got a few million years of hitting things with sticks and making it work. Zargon actually laughed, a sound like grinding metal that somehow conveyed genuine humor. The Academy will be implementing new training protocols, primitive weapons familiarization, close combat without technological enhancement. We are calling it the Valdez Protocol. That's going to look great on my resume. See that it does. Dismissed, champion. 6 months later, Kira Valdez departed the Caltherian Military Institute with honors, commendations, and a wooden staff that had been ceremonially upgraded to include decorative carvings from 15 different species. The staff still didn't have any technology in it. It was still just a stick. It had still defeated plasma rifles, neural disruptors, probability shields, and every expectation the galaxy had about what humans could accomplish. Supreme Commandant Vex Thor watched her shuttle depart and turned to Kess. Make a note. Next year's human exchange program should include multiple participants. If one human with a stick can revolutionize our combat doctrine, imagine what several of them could accomplish. Sir, do you really believe the rest of their species possesses similar capabilities? I believe, Vex Thor said thoughtfully, that any species creative enough to invent lacrosse and then send their players to military academies armed with sticks deserves closer attention. Also, I want to watch our instructors' reactions when the next group arrives. Diplomatic relations, sir. Diplomatic relations, Vex Thor agreed, and perhaps a healthy dose of keeping the Academy on its toes. Complacency is the enemy of excellence, Adjutant. The human reminded us of that. Far below, in Training Hall 7, Class Theta 10 was beginning their first combat simulation. Half of them carried standard military weapons. The other half carried wooden staffs and looked unreasonably confident about it. Instructor Zargon watched them with the resigned air of someone who had spent 3,000 years perfecting combat doctrine, only to discover that sometimes the most sophisticated weapon was the one that made you think differently. In the observation deck, betting pools were already forming. The smart money was on the cadets with sticks. Nobody found that surprising anymore. The galaxy, it seemed, was learning that humans had a particular talent for taking what they were given, deciding it was sufficient, and then proceeding to demonstrate exactly why everyone else's assumptions had been entertainingly wrong. And somewhere in the diplomatic archives, filed under Lessons from the Human Exchange Program, there appeared a new entry. Never underestimate a species that plays competitive sports involving sticks. They've been practicing longer than you've existed, and they're better at it than you'd ever believe possible. The wooden staff hung in the Academy's Hall of Champions, mounted beside plasma rifles and energy swords and probability weapons. A monument to the idea that sometimes the best technology is the kind that makes you remember how to think.